Ah, yes, the movement in Battlefield. The endless debate. The movement in Battlefield was being debated while the game was still a concept art. Yes, I'm not kidding. Last year, when we received the first concept arts of Battlefield 6, people were already wondering, is Battlefield 6 gonna be like Call of Duty? Is it gonna be like Apex Legends? What type of movement mechanics are we gonna have? I don't want any of them. I want the game to be like the one you're playing right now. I want it to be like the post-slide nerf Battlefield 1. DICE then released the open beta. We saw the movement. You could do some pretty crazy stuff during the Battlefield 6 open beta, and after the beta has concluded, they went ahead and nerfed movement pretty significantly if we were to judge their blog post at the time. This was later cleared up by Florian Drunks, the game designer of Battlefield 6, and this tweet from him resurfaced on Reddit yesterday, but this is a pretty significant insight in what exactly they did to the movement. So let's get into it. Can I ask why movement, specifically jumping, was nerfed? Wouldn't a first jump increase in accuracy with diminishing returns to spam jump been a better change? I feel like you're nerfing movement for a vocal minority. When most were okay with it during the beta, feels like a rug pull. Florian then replies, adding diminishing returns to jumping is what we are actually doing. An initial slide or initial jump will not be affected. This is in the end a balancing act. We believe that movement was in a pretty good spot, but some tuning in specific extremes were needed. So this is extremely important information here from Florian. This means that in Battlefield 6 open beta on launch day, you will still be able to do this. Here are a few of many clips I had during my own playtime of Battlefield 6 open beta. What you're watching is me using this initial slide and jump to basically overwhelm people who were holding angles on me and who knew that I was there, but the only way I could really engage them is by using movement to my advantage. So this initial movement is basically staying in Battlefield 6 on launch day, unless DICE of course goes and does a complete 180 and rug pulls basically the movement out of the game, and then we get this game, Battlefield 1, which was strictly a positional and map knowledge type of game. You can't really move around that well in Battlefield 1 after they nerfed the slide. When the game came out, there was basically a pretty substantial slide, I would describe it, in Battlefield 1. People didn't like it, they nerfed it, and we ended up with this game. So DICE definitely doesn't want to have Battlefield 1 movement back in Battlefield 6 for a couple of reasons. First, when you have a game like Battlefield 1 which has no movement and the only skill expression is you having hundreds and hundreds of hours played on specific maps. For example, if you take me as an example, I played Cape Helix I don't know how many goddamn times in my life, so I know exactly what angles to hold, I know where the people spawn, so I can, pre-gas them, I can pre-fire them. I do well for myself on maps in Battlefield 1, even when I have no movement. I exactly know where to look for the enemies. The new players who wouldn't know these things would kinda be soft gate-capped from having fun. Let me describe it this way. I'm not meaning hard gate-capped, soft gate-capped. So what I would be doing here, if these were all new players, let's imagine this is Battlefield 6, I'll be doing the exact same thing I'm doing here on Battlefield 1 on Battlefield 6. What is more fun for a new player to experience? If I was moving around like I was in Battlefield 6 open beta, or if I was head glitching them and holding angles with some gas grenade. I think DICE probably did some internal tests there and decided, hey, we don't want people just holding angles and head glitching on, boxes and stuff. Hell, Delta Force, a game that came last year, that gameplay of that game is basically just holding angles on impossible head glitches from 150 meters away, and I think they probably decided against that. They're also including a rank mode in the Gauntlet mode, which is coming in Battlefield 6, the full edition, so they definitely want movement to be a mix of skill expression along with the gunplay. The gunplay, on the other hand, of Battlefield 6 I felt was one of its weaker things. The guns, larger to me, the gunplay felt very unimpressive. There was really no skill expression in the gunplay of that game, for me personally at least. The guns, in my opinion, had barely any recoil. I just, basically pulled my mouse down and people were just dying across, pretty crazy distances. So the only way I could really, use my knowledge as a Battlefield player and the skill expression was basically just the movement. Anything else in Battlefield 6 was largely forgettable when it comes down to the way I was defeating my opponents. There was no crazy gadgets other than, the double launcher. There was no crazy map things you could do other than the roof glitch. So, kind of everything that was memorable in Battlefield 6 when it came down to gameplay was just basically bugs and overpowered gadgets like the thermobaric launcher, This is why it was a shock to me when they actually went ahead and nerfed movement, because I thought that some other things, like the shotgun, like the launcher, and some of the other crazy stuff was a pretty big priority rather than nerfing the movement. Now, what they actually did was nerf the physics bug of the movement, so that Mario jump you did at the end of a slide or when you jump from super high distances is gone. But like I said, everything initial is staying. How do you feel about the movement during the Battlefield 6 open beta? Was it okay for you? Was it too fast? Was it too slow? I had some friends who are, very good players at Battlefield. They've been playing Battlefield since as early as Battlefield 1942, basically the first Battlefield game, who told me they wanted to be faster. Yes, you heard me correctly, faster. I personally think that maybe some of the animations could be a little bit less clunky, but if I had to pick which movement I would want, the one which was, decent, I'm talking specifically about movement, it would be the Battlefield 6 open beta movement for sure. I wouldn't want to have Battlefield 2042 movement. For me personally, they went a little bit far with the grappling hook and the chaining of the bunny hops you could do as McKay and some of the other characters when you build enough momentum. That I think doesn't belong in Battlefield. But the open beta movement is completely fine. And I think I'm pretty feeling good about the game when DICE is agreeing with me. To be frank with you guys, the thing that bothered me the most during the Battlefield 6 open beta wasn't movement, it wasn't the gunplay, it wasn't even the shotguns or the launchers or the vehicle physics. As an infantryman, it was how much 3D spotting there was during the Battlefield 6 open beta. Between the constant UAV spam from the recon, the TUG's motion sensor being planted on every corner on Iberian Offensive and Cairo and some areas of Liberation Peak, although much less there, we're gonna get into this a little bit later. It really felt like I'm playing, in some instances, against a bunch of wall hackers. People were just charging with shotguns, they knew exactly where you were, and it became, at some areas, just completely unplayable in my humble opinion. I'm really hoping they go in the route of Battlefield 5, which in my opinion had the best spotting in the series basically. You just marked a location where you thought the enemies was and you had to kind of communicate with your squad where you think they really are, but you didn't know exactly where they were. We knew they're there behind that rock, but on what angle? Are they left? Are they right? Are they above? Are they below? Where the hell are they? It created this tension when you were taking gunfights in Battlefield 5. I know Battlefield 5 had issues with visibility, and I think of course 3D spotting would have helped with visibility. I know why they have it in Battlefield 6. The visibility in that game isn't the greatest because of how amount of spam there is in that game. I understand this, but if they could make the visibility better and then reduce the amount of 3D spotting, I think it would really benefit the game. It led to this exhaustive feeling you had when you played Battlefield 6 Open Beta. I read this a bunch on Reddit and on X. People said, hey, Battlefield 6 is a very fun game, but I feel so exhausted after playing it for a couple of hours. They're exhausted, guys, because they're getting shot at 24/7. When you combine the 3D spotting with the small maps, like I mentioned earlier, there are tugs and UAVs flying in the air non-stop. It really leads to fatigue, guys. It really does. I felt fatigue as well as a veteran of the franchise. I have over 15,000 hours in the Battlefield franchise over the past 20 years, and I felt fatigued. I didn't feel this fatigue since, playing Metro on Battlefield 3 and BF4, where it's just constant spam, and you're also 3D spotted all the time. I'm hoping when we're coming to launch, I know there isn't much time left, let's be real here, it's 30 days, but maybe later after launch, maybe they could address some of the 3D spotting to be a little bit less. I think it would be beneficial for the game. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, drop a like and a comment for the God Algo. And if you're new here and you want to see more Battlefield content, then subscribe, and I'll see you boys in the next Battlefield video. Have a great day. Take it easy. This is Ace signing out. Bye bye.